Welcome to my review for Halloween H20, the 1998 film which marked the return of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys right from the start. Even though I've been a massive, die-hard Halloween fan for most of my life, I've never been that big on this particular film, which makes reviewing it kind of awkward because I'm aware that I'm mostly in the minority on this one. I regularly see people put this in their top 2 or 3 on their Halloween rankings. Even people who are lukewarm on the film tend to have it sort of halfway up the list. But I'm not going to hold back on my criticism. What would be the point on that? But if you were tuning in hoping for a Halloween H2O love-in, you might be disappointed. Now, a quick synopsis about the film, just in case you haven't seen it. This is the 7th film in the series, but it completely ignores the events of 3, 4, 5 and 6. So it's a sequel to just the first 2 films. So Michael Myers has not been seen in 20 years since that explosion at the Haddonfield Hospital at the end of number 2. But just to play it safe, Laurie has long since fled in Illinois. She's moved to California. She's got herself a new career as a teacher. She's had a son. She's got a new boyfriend. And at first glance, her life would seem to have moved on, but she's still having the occasional nightmare about her brother, and this has led her to turn to alcohol. It's significantly damaged her relationship with her son, and it could very well jeopardize her chances of a happy relationship with her new boyfriend. And to make matters worse, Michael is about to show up for the first time in 20 years, so that's the plot. Now, what I've just been talking about actually neatly takes me into my first big criticism for today, which is the fact that they retcon all those films in the middle of the timeline. I just don't think they needed to do it. You could have had this film exist in the same timeline as 4, 5, 6, the entire Thorn trilogy, and hardly had to have changed anything. I think they maybe wanted to just completely shut themselves off from having anything to do with the whole Thorn stuff, but you could just have ignored that and just had this same film anyway, so why retcon it? It doesn't make any sense to me. And actually, Laurie's alcoholism would make more sense in a world where the massacres of 88, 89 and 95 had happened, because if I was in her shoes and I'd have seen all that in the news time and time again, I would have thought, my God, he just keeps coming back. They cannot kill him. Eventually, he's going to find me, and I'm worried like hell about it. So in that event, I'd be drinking. But if he's not been seen since 78, then surely you would have moved on, and surely she would have done. How else would she have knuckled down to get her teaching qualifications and become a head teacher? It just doesn't make any sense for me. So big negative on the movie straight away. It is good to see Laurie back, and Jamie Lee gives 110% in the role like she does in any role, whether it's Halloween or A Fish Called Wendy or whatever. And I get the fact that they needed her back for this one to enable these movies to continue as viable things for cinema. I get all that. But leaving it all aside, can I honestly say that Laurie entertains me in this with all the issues and bickering with her son? Not really. I mean, the Laurie from the first film is one of my favourite final girls of all time, but not the one from number 2 and not the one from H2O. Although, at least I'll say for this one, it's more entertaining than the Laurie from Haddonfield Hospital, but that's not saying much. I like what she does at the end, and I'm going there now. So spoilers, 3, 2, 1, you had your chance. So at the end, an ambulance comes down this cliff with Laurie and Michael in it or hanging off it, and they have this final confrontation where Laurie takes off Myers' head. And the first time I saw this, I was completely satisfied with it. I thought it was a great ending for the series if this was the final one. And I'm still able to watch it now thinking that it is Michael under that mask, at least when I'm watching this film. Obviously, when I get to Resurrection, I then change my way of thinking and start to believe it's the medic. But probably for some people, they cannot watch H2O now without thinking it's the medic sat there, and that's a shame, but I've been spared that fate, thankfully. I don't like the bit just before the finale where Laurie goes back into the school with that axe. It's as if the film's trying to say, oh, look, it's Laurie, the bravest final girl of all. Well, bullshit. I mean, if she had a shotgun, fine, I could believe that she could go back in there and reasonably expect to kill Myers, but going back in there with an axe, it just doesn't work for me, no. So, to backtrack a little bit, I like the ending with the ambulance, and I like the beginning. My enjoyment of this film is sort of like a sandwich, like the start, the end, and everything in between. I wouldn't quite call it a shit sandwich, but it's certainly an unsatisfying sandwich. But yeah, all that stuff with Marion, using those teenage boys to shield her because she's starting to panic because she thinks Myers is back in the vicinity, that worked for me. It was great to see that character come back. And isn't it weird how half the kills in this film are at the start, because we get 3 to begin with, and then for the rest of the movie, Myers only kills 3 more people. So I think the idea is that this was going to be more of a character-driven Halloween film, but the trouble with that is you then need good characters to back that up, and great characters are not chock-a-block in this film, sadly. The older characters are pretty good. Your teachers, security guards. Janet Leigh is really good in a brief cameo as Norma, I think she's called. Will Brennan's a really good character. It's good to see Laurie going out with a nice guy, and it was a shame to see him get killed later in the movie. LL Cool J, everybody loves him. I really enjoyed this role. Seeing him talk on the phone to his girlfriend about his novel writing was a lot of fun. All these characters I just mentioned, absolutely fine, but the problem is when we get to the teenage characters. There's 4 of them that we follow, and they are all dull as dishwater. They are some of the most boring characters I've seen in slasher movies. I've seen this film a number of times, and I honestly could not name you a single character trait among these 4. They just seem to exist in this vortex, or vacuum, I should say, to get the right word, as 2 couples who act like they've been going out for about a decade. Obviously they haven't, because they're only about 17 years old or whatever, but there's nothing about them at all. They're not unlikable, they're not likable, they've got no dramas going on between them. They just exist, and then they die or escape in the car at the end. I mean, I would much rather hang out with the characters from Resurrection, if I'm being completely honest. Don't mean to offend anybody, but at least those guys were at least a little bit entertaining. Not these 4. And it's nothing against the actors. I've always liked Josh Hartnett. I've seen quite a few good films with him in, none for a while, admittedly, but they were there in the past. Michelle Williams, I remember watching her in Dawson's Creek. I'm not sure about the other 2, but it's not an acting thing. They're just blandly written characters. It was like they were written in an hour. They're really, really bad. Setting as well. I mean, I don't mind the idea of taking Michael Myers out of Haddonfield and going somewhere different. And the idea of a Halloween film set on a school campus sounds pretty good to me. It's different in a way that Halloween 2 was different by setting it at a hospital. But it's what they do with the school setting that's the problem, because it doesn't feel like we spend any time in this film away from the front gate or 50 yards from the front gate. The only places we see off the top of my head are the front gate, the boiler room, the path to the principal's office, the principal's office itself, and not a lot else. A couple of corridors, I'm quite hazy, but I mean, think of all the untapped places on a school campus that they could have used. Football field, science labs, classrooms, library, swimming pool, the roof. I mean, a series like this, if they're going to set a film on a campus, they should be striving to make it one of the best campus slashers ever, and you're not going to achieve that hanging out at the front gate for the entire runtime. So it's just really odd to me. Now, there are also a couple of things about the film that I've personally not spotted, but I've heard are in there. So apparently, some of the music for this film is recycled straight from Scream. I've not noticed that. I've never watched Halloween 7 and Scream in the same week, so but apparently it's there. Let me know if it's not. Also, supposedly, during one of the chase sequences, or some scene involving Michael Myers, he changes his mask apparently halfway through the scene. That's terrible if they did that. I've not noticed that, funnily enough, but I'm not the most observant person sometimes. But certainly the next time I watch the film, I'm going to keep an eye out for that. It'll give me something to do, so I don't nod off. Now, I will finish on a positive, because I would just like to. I do like Halloween films, just not this one. And what I'll say is, the scene at the restroom, I like that one, where Myers he does steal the car from the woman and her daughter. That was good. Although, again, it's off campus. Everything off campus in this film, good. Everything on campus, not so good. And him doing that, him stealing that car, is just an example of the sort of weird behaviour that we used to get in the original film, and they started to take that out more and more as we went into the later sequels. But it's good to see him do something just weird and odd like that, and not just kill somebody. But on the whole, if you want my final thoughts, I think this was just a film that was capitalising on the fact that Jamie Lee was back, and just not actually trying to write a really good movie. It's just how it seems to me. I know a lot of people do treasure this one, but I'm sadly not one of them. So let's get to the bag of terror and see what score we've got today. Just the 2 bloody axes for Halloween H20. That is the same score that I gave to Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. So those 2 films are right down the bottom of the list for me when it comes to Halloween. No pin for the horror locations map today. I've already got a bunch of them in California, so I'm not going to add any more, I've decided. Right, I will be back soon for Halloween Resurrection. And until next time, take care, bye-bye.